clearly see that the roadways are still slick, so there was still a lot of moisture present. We still do have a wedge in place, at least over the next 24 hours. And so it's still going to be that cloudy, drizzly kind of mess. And so with temperatures in the mountains falling tonight below freezing, there will be a chance for some areas of refreeze when we talk about the fact that the moisture is there and then we see temperatures freeze again overnight. So just be mindful of that, especially if you're in Ashwaubenon, Avery County, pretty much anywhere north of the I-40 corridor. Now, closer to the Charlotte area, it's been a chilly day all day. In fact, the official high temperature was 44, but that happened just after midnight. And so temperatures have actually been steady or lowering throughout the day compared to what normally happens right where we warm up. Right now we're at 37 in Charlotte. However, there is a wind chill factor right now. Winds about 5 to 10 miles an hour. So it's 37 in Charlotte, but it feels like 31. Rowan County, parts of Iredell County seeing the worst in terms of wind chill right now. Latest wind chill in Statesville has gotten a little bit better, but just a little bit ago it was 29. You could, of course, see 27 there in Salisbury. So where was the snow? Where was it the worst? Well, it was just north of us, outside of North Carolina, and really mostly up toward Virginia, parts of Maryland, and parts of the D.C. area. Some of those areas still under a winter weather advisory through 1 a.m., but a lot of that moisture has started to subside. You can see the array of storm reports over the last 24 hours. Now, there were some here in the Charlotte area, or I guess technically up in the mountains, but there were some here in our 22 county viewing area. They were just very few and far between. So note that these are not at the highest elevation spots, so there is a chance that some of the higher elevation spots did see more. But officially, our best reports that we had was parts of Watauga County, really toward the western and southwestern side. You can see they're just southwest of Blowing Rock. We saw a train spotter report, freezing rain or ice accumulation of 0.1. Now, if you remember from discussing this earlier this week, but a quarter inch is when we start to see issues when it comes to power lines, things like that. 0.1 is more of a very light black ice problem. So thankfully not seeing as much of that. But what's interesting is if you look at the time, that was just after 9 a.m. where we had talked about how the higher elevation spots would be colder for much longer, which meant that they had a higher chance of freezing rain and ice. Well, notice that's the latest report. Snow 0.5 up in Ashe County. That was at 7 a.m. And then the earliest report we had was in Watauga County, closer to Boone, at 0.1. And that was actually at the earliest at 4:30. If you were with us last night at 11 o'clock when we were approaching midnight, we were starting to see some areas of light rain in Charlotte. However, again, we were noting that the earlier arrival was a much less chance of you would even see a substantial chance of cold rain, and that's essentially exactly what happened. So here's the current setup now. Satellite and radar showing a lot of that moisture now shifting toward the immediate coast, and there are going to be a few waves of moisture, mainly south and east of Charlotte, really similar to where these spots are setting up right now. So if you are heading to the coast at any point this weekend, just be mindful that there is more additional rainfall possible. Here's Futurecast, and I have adjusted this a little bit further south and southeast to account for the fact that we have seen kind of that trend of south and southeast with the latest moisture content coming in. What I do want to note is that with temperatures today only being in the upper 30s and lower 40s because of the wedge, notice tomorrow morning we're still wedged in, and we're actually wedged in for a lot of the afternoon. So when you look at the temperatures, notice that most of the day we're still in the 40s. So it is still going to be a pretty chilly and raw day. We might finally start to see some sunshine mixing in, but closer to 4 and 5 p.m., especially in Charlotte. Mountains will probably see that earlier. But again, at this point, because of what time of year we're in, is about an hour from sunset. So still most of the day is cloudy. With the clear sky conditions overnight heading into Sunday, will actually be colder. So it might not feel colder, but we are going to be closer to freezing Sunday morning, which will allow for that chance for some freezing fog, especially near the I-85 corridor. And then really the next change that we're watching is going to be Monday. We have another approaching storm system that at Monday around midnight will be over parts of Georgia. This one, like every winter system that we see this time of year in the Carolinas, is going to be a bit of a question mark. There's enough moisture that we will likely see some rain across portions of Charlotte all the way up to the mountains. Right now trending up in the mountains that they could see some snowfall accumulation. But of course, a question mark will be, can any of that wintry weather mix in further south? Right now it's looking pretty unlikely in Charlotte, but it's something our team will be watching. So Saturday is our big magical toy drive push at the Belco at Carolina Place Mall, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Lots of clouds. It is going to be chilly, so make sure you're bundled up if you're sticking around. And I know we've talked a lot about this over the last few days, but just want to give folks a reminder, especially if you're not from Charlotte, that cold air damming or the wedge setup we've had the last few days is very typical in the winter months. Really, winter and spring are the most common to see this. And it's when high pressure starts to push colder air in from the north and east. What happens is all of that cold air gets trapped on the east side of the mountains, essentially acting like a block. It happens a little bit in northern Georgia too because of the Blue Ridge Mountains, but not as aggressive as what we see here in the Carolinas. And so when that cold air is in place, then we get what's called a moisture stream from the south. This is very common, right? So cold air is coming this way, then warm air is coming this way. And as the two converge, remember cold air is really dense and stays closer to the ground, and then warm air is less dense. So if this is the cold air, this is the warm air. As it moves above, we start to see it condense, getting colder, and then that's what allows for the clouds and the rain to start to develop. So that's why you oftentimes see these kind of cloudy, drizzly days, and then with it trapped on the east side of the mountains and got nowhere to go, it can often stay for multiple days. Now, with that being said, because it's going to be cold in the mountains, especially tonight, we will watch for some freezing fog. As I mentioned, though, it'll be closer to the I-85 corridor that I'll be watching this Sunday morning. All of these areas will be freezing. And all of these areas will be foggy. So it's going to be most common, I think, along this corridor, just based on where that convergence zone looks to be with those two. Clears out quickly by the second half of Sunday afternoon. So really quickly, what's the new, now the next? Small chance of winter weather Monday, mainly up in the mountains. I mentioned that a second ago. Right now we're cloudy, chilly, and drizzly. And then again, I just showed you that freezing fog potential mainly north. What is nice also is that Sunday looks to be a touch warmer. Temperatures with a little bit of sunshine in the afternoon will likely reach the lower 50s. But just as quickly as that's moving in, of course, we know another system's moving in on Monday. So you can see that there in our Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day. Once that system Monday moves through, Tuesday probably going to be our coldest morning we've seen in quite some time. Another hard freeze likely with the mid-20s. Good news is, though, it does look like we eventually start to warm things back up Wednesday, Thursday. Those will probably be the best days, closest to average that we've seen since before Thanksgiving. We did get into the 50s on Thursday, but since Thanksgiving, that's probably the closest to average. Otherwise, folks, I hope you have a safe, happy, healthy, and wonderful weekend ahead. No winter weather in the near term.